in South Tampa. And just to note, we are recording this program for those that couldn't be here in real time. But we had such a good time back in 2019 at the Fitness Fun Studio. We had a wonderful turnout and a yummy potluck. It was so much fun that we decided to bring it back again via Zoom back in 2020. And I had about 16 people attend. It was great. And we're back again with even more participants. I'm really grateful to see everybody here. Thank you for attending. I want to really start out the program by first acknowledging Cindy Kramer, clinical nurse educator, for really sharing this important program. She is my guru. She is the leader of the Palliative Care Committee. She's also working right now with Life Path Hospice and Chapters Health Services. So thank you, Cindy, for sharing your program and your people. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank all the other healthcare providers that have come before us to pave the pathway. Thank you to all the Tampa General Hospital
Oh, you're muted. Gabrielle, can you hear me? You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So let's get started. Thank you. I want to take this moment to acknowledge Cindy Kramer, clinical nurse educator, for sharing this important program. Back in 2019, we hosted this program at our Fitness Fun Studio in South Tampa. We had a great turnout. We had a delicious potluck. So for fun, we decided to do it again in 2020 over Zoom. And here we are again, 2022, back again. And I also, Cindy, thank you so much for sharing this program and your people. I want to thank and acknowledge all the healthcare providers that have come before us to pave the pathway. All of the Tampa General Hospital palliative care resource, nurses, and professionals. This is a very dedicated team. I've been on the team for over 10 years. And thank you all for taking the time to attend and address this important topic. I am going to ask you to save your questions for the end. Go ahead and write them down. And I hope to answer all of them in the program. But if there isn't, if we miss something that you really need to have addressed, we'll take some time at the end to discuss any questions or comments together. Okay. And I've got you all muted. You can unmute yourself if you need to, but just take this moment and try to eliminate any distractions that you might have. Any of those background activities, put them on pause and engage with us here in our program. Let's get started. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Gabrielle. I've worked in healthcare over 25 years. I'm a registered nurse with a master's degree in nursing from USF. Currently, I'm working in the radiology department at Tampa General Hospital. I also serve an active role on the Palliative Care Committee. I achieved my board certification as a meditation specialist back in 2017. I do love my job, but to be honest, it is stressful at times. And that's why I started working with meditation both at home and at work. My wife and I own the Fitness Fun, which is a mind-body wellness enterprise. It has a focus on fun. My wife is a fitness trainer and I lead meditation sessions. Right now, we're practicing virtually on Zoom. So if you want to get more information about me or any upcoming classes, please email me. You can also visit us online or check out our YouTube channel. We have a variety of meditations posted, as well as some fun physical workouts to enjoy. And thanks for your support to everyone in our wellness community. I am super grateful. All right, there's an elephant in the room. This is a poem by Carrie Kettering. There's an elephant in the room. It is large and squatting, so it is hard to get around it. Yet we squeeze by with "how are you?" and "I'm fine," and 1,000 other forms of trivial chatter. We talk about the weather. We talk about work. We talk about everything else except the elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room. We all know it's there. We are thinking about the elephant as we talk together. It is constantly on our minds. For you see, it is a very big elephant. It has hurt us all, but we do not talk about the elephant in the room. Oh, please, please say her name. Oh, please say Barbara again. Oh, please let us talk about the elephant in the room. For if we talk about her death, perhaps we can talk about her life. Can I say Barbara to you and not have you look away? For if I cannot, you are leaving me alone in a room with an elephant. So let's talk about death and dying. Here is some history, right? Well, people used to die at home, but not so much anymore. There are greater than 2.8 million deaths in the US, and that is the figure from back in 2019. Back in 1999, hospice cared for over 700,000 patients. Now, back in 1949, 50% of deaths occurred in hospitals. But in the 1950s, that's when higher technology starts, right? So we're extending lives and we're prolonging death and dying. There's a study back in 2001 that revealed 60 to 80% of all deaths occur in hospitals now. That means 9 to 47% have a chance of being in the ICU in the last 6 months of life. 10 to 69% of ICU patients will die. Now, 20% may leave the ICU, but they'll die in the hospital still. 81% of cancer patients prefer to die at home, but 56% die in the hospital. 42% of mortality for cancer patients are admitted to ICU. So in the ICU, there's two types of patients, right? There's acute sudden illness, and then secondly, there's acute exacerbation of protracted, unpredictable chronic illness. The goal of ICU is to give high-tech curative care to save lives. It's not about palliative care or comfort care. We choose life over comfort every time. And we're going to talk about this more a little bit later. But back in 1967, the first Advance Directive came about. It really wasn't big until about 1976 with Karen Quinlan, that case. Now, 75% of people say that Advance Directive is a good idea, but about 35% of people actually have one. Let's talk a little bit about the money of dying, the cost of dying, right? A hospital death is about $1,000 a day. A nursing home, about $1,000 a week. Hospice, on the other hand, is about $100 a day, and that includes medications. Our life expectancy has increased. Back in the 1900s, the average life expectancy was 47 years. And now in 2020, the average life expectancy is 79 years. And this number is increasing. We've changed, right? Let's assess and compare the direction that we've progressed from then till now. So back then, it was about comfort, easing suffering. Infections were the main cause of death, and the average life expectancy was really less than 50 years. The caregiver was family. Patients died at home, and they experienced a short time until death. Now things are different. It's about cure at all costs. Chronic illness is the main cause of death. The average life expectancy is climbing at 79 years. The caregivers are now strangers. People die in institutions, and there's a prolonged time to death with ups and downs. Now, end-of-life care in the hospital. Many physicians are not adequately taught in school, and this is starting to change. But some look at death as a failure. You know, death used to be familiar in the US. It was a part of our aging process, but our culture has changed. And now death is viewed as a disease to be conquered. People are kept alive with chronic illnesses. They're rescued from multiple exacerbations. Chronic illness is now unpredictable. It, used to be able to see the writing on the wall and accept death when it came. It was more predictable. But now death is no longer a natural outcome, but a failure of medicine, according to many. We measure success by one more day of life. And in a teaching hospital, this should be better, but sometimes it's worse. So there's a disparity between the way people die and the way they want to die. And patient and family perspective, there's many fears, pain. They don't want to be a burden, prolonged death, dependence, other symptoms, abandonment, roles change and reverse, and there's concerns about money. So how do we bridge this gap? Now, this is a drawing from one of the first LNET courses, the End of Life Consortium courses. And this gal, this nurse that attended, she drew this picture of her dad and how she wished her dad had died, relaxed and tranquil. And this is how her dad actually died. In a hospital with a lot of tubes and technology surrounding him. I want to share a quote from Mother Teresa. Is this where we want to be? In third world countries, people die with their hand held and their pain managed. In the modern world, people die alone, in pain, and with technology in abundance. But it's the technology age, right? This is a slippery slope. We keep adding one more thing until we don't know if we're prolonging life or extending death. We're prisoners to our technology at times. If ICU patients have a 95% chance of death, we feel the moral obligation to try for the 5% chance of survival. So what can we do to prevent suffering and prolonging death? Well, that's where an advance directive comes in. Now, when people have a power of attorney, it's usually for financial things. They need a power of attorney for health care. That's what an advance directive is. This advance directive designates a decision maker. And if there are several versions, we'll go by the most current date, right? The definition of an advance directive is it's a witness document or oral statement in which a competent patient makes healthcare choices that take effect in the event the patient loses decisional capacity. Now, a living will is another term, also power of attorney for healthcare. But let's talk a minute about decisional capacity. Decisional capacity is determined by a physician when a patient is sick and unable to make decisions. It can be temporary due to their illness or medications. Competence, on the other hand, is a legal term, and that's determined by a judge, and it can only be revoked by a judge. That's where someone is assigned by the court to make the person's decisions. And remember, we must have capacity when we are making our advance directives. That's why it's so important to do it now. Now, patients have a right to accept or refuse care, the right to an advance directive where providers are obligated to protect their wishes. Let's talk about what is a healthcare surrogate. Now, this is someone that's chosen to represent the patient's wishes regarding healthcare. This can include speaking with doctors and other healthcare providers. This gives the healthcare surrogate the power to give consent for diagnostic, medical, surgical, and psychiatric treatments. Also, it's about applying for medical benefits on the patient's behalf. But it gives that person the ability to make decisions about withholding or withdrawing life-prolonging treatments. Now, with a healthcare surrogate, we need to talk to them about what we do and do not want. I invite you to pick someone that you trust, and they have to be willing to take on this responsibility. When we do our advance directive, you do need 2 witnesses, and neither one should be your healthcare surrogate. But really, talk to your whole family about your choices and why you chose your surrogate. Have a backup. And, basically you can choose when this goes into effect. You should choose someone that you trust to carry out your wishes. And that may not always be your spouse. Also, again, a reminder, the designated surrogate cannot sign as a witness on your advance directive form. Also, a healthcare surrogate is not required to be in hospice. Now, these are some links where you can find additional forms that are available. And again, I'm going to send out a PDF of this program so that you can use those links. But contemplate your options, right? And work with who you trust to uphold your decision. The person that loves you the most may not be able to let you go. And remember, not making a decision is making a decision. So who makes your decision if you haven't decided? This is the hierarchy of substitute decision makers. And it starts with your healthcare surrogate or a legal guardian. So those come at the top of the list. Now, if you haven't picked a healthcare surrogate or a legal guardian has not been assigned, the next person would be your spouse. And in some cases at the hospital, we've seen spouses that are not together. They may be separated, but they're not legally divorced. And that spouse still becomes your decision maker. Now, the next in line is an adult child or a majority of children. If the patient is a child, the parent goes to the top of the list, right? Next comes adult sibling or the majority of siblings. So again, I know some patients that have been in a situation where They may be estranged from their siblings, and now their siblings are responsible for making their healthcare decisions. Next would be an adult relative, followed by a close personal friend. That requires an affidavit, or two physicians. Now, keep in mind that you can change your mind here. Once you complete an advance directive, and I know some of you have these forms already, but you can update them and you can change them really at any time. It's not written in blood. So as your goals change, you can update your advance directive. Your healthcare and your goals, can change. Don't worry about your doctor trying to hurry you along. More than likely, it's going to be the opposite. So let's talk about how to navigate some of these decisions, right? So Empath Health offers some guidelines for resuscitation and end of life care. There's treatment choices for little or no chance of recovery. Do you want CPR and life support, surgery, antibiotics, lab work, tube feedings? Is there little or no chance for recovery? What sort of quality of life are you contemplating or considering here? So these choices do require some attention. And I think that's where people sometimes fall down on, knowing that having advance directives a good idea. But how do they choose? So this is another link down here at the bottom of the slide with Empath Health choices. Let's talk a little bit about palliative care, right? What is palliative care? Well, it's for anyone with a life-limiting illness, not just those that are actively dying, but it's about quality of life and symptom management, discovering what your personal goals are, difficult conversations. You can still elect to receive aggressive care if that's what you wish. It just depends on where you are in your course of illness. But it's about what you want and your goals for the way that you deal with serious illness and ultimately your end of life care. Now, I found this document and I did send it out to everyone, the 5 wishes, right? The 5 wishes are the person I want to make my healthcare decisions for me when I can't. The second wish is the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. Third, how comfortable I want to be, how I want people to treat me, and what I want my loved ones to know. And I love this document because it really kind of unpacks some of these decisions and how to make them. So please take some time to review the document and really look at the choices that we have. It's really kind of more than a living will. So it expresses how you want to be treated. Now, I'm not sure, I believe that it is legally recognized in Florida, but I'm not sure that it's out there. So I kind of included this document when you registered so that you can use it to create the advance directive document. It gets a little bit confusing. So let's talk a little bit about the lingo here, right? Withdrawing care, which means you can't do anything more, would mean that you stop all treatments. And then there's comfort measures only, right? We can do many things for comfort and quality of life, but your goals determine the treatments and intervention. It's about focusing on comfort and care. What is a DNR and a DNRO? Okay, so DNRs do not resuscitate. The DNRO is a state of Florida DNR form. It's recognized and honored throughout the state. Some facilities want to specify also DNI, which means do not intubate. Again, it gets a little bit confusing, but the DNR is signed by a physician, and they won't do it just because you want it. They have to agree with your reason for wanting to have it. So it does take some negotiating with your doctor. If they won't sign it for like an elderly patient, you feel very strongly about having a DNR, you can always find another doctor. Now, let's take a word about organ donation. It's important to note and discuss this. Giving the gift of life to another, just make sure that your surrogate knows your choices about this also. Almost anyone can donate something, but you can be specific about donating only certain organs. And even if you have an organ donor card, your family can still decline this. So again, make sure that your healthcare surrogate knows if, this is something that you feel strongly about. Keep in mind that nobody's rushing to turn you off. Once you have brain death, that's when organ donation is appropriate. Again, you can really help other people here. Let's talk a little bit about quality of life too. Now, this is a multi-dimensional experience. So it includes physical, psychological, social, and spiritual components. I really like this slide because it shows all of the different aspects that go into a quality of life. Thinking about, and this again can change over time. I remember when my dad was dying, he was okay with a wheelchair for quality of life, but that was at a certain point. There was a point where that seemed ridiculous for him, and that was something that he didn't want. But, as he got older, riding around in his scooter really was a part of quality of life. So, keep in mind, as your health changes, your definition of quality of life can change as well. There's so many components to consider. And there's things, that we can't cure yet, some of the top illnesses, but there are others. And don't forget, traumas that end up unsalvageable. And COPD is an example. It's one of the worst prognosis. It has a worse prognosis than stage 1 cancer. Approximately 50% of COPD people have about a 5-year mortality, and approximately 60% if admitted to the ICU, and if they end up on a vent. So 23% of people may even not even be aware of their diagnosis and what it means. So let's talk, again, end of life care can apply to all of these conditions. The reality is we can't fix everything. When we accept that death is inevitable, we offer our presence as witness to the process of letting go. And this can be really hard to talk about. No matter how hard we try, the perfect word or gestures rarely, if ever, exist. But often it's just enough to be present with the person. I have a friend that was recently diagnosed with a brain tumor, glioblastoma, brain mass. And, sitting with her and just saying, I am so sad to see this happening to you. How are you doing? What's going on with you? Really can just break the ice and give her an opportunity to talk about it. Because, her family is scared too. They don't know what to say. So sometimes being the one to just be present and turn towards this situation can be the biggest gift of ever. And it's all about you, right? Although we don't get a choice on if we die, we can decide how we die in some cases, and even where we die. You know, some people may choose the hospital because it may make them feel more comfortable or secure, if you will, because they have all the help, all of the resources that they might need. But other people, they may just want to die at home in their own environment, in their own comfort, surrounded by people that love them. But remember, it's up to you. That's where the empowerment comes in. Now, I love this slide. Notice who the leader of the team is, right? The patient. It's all about you, the patient. Everyone else is equal below them. Now, the slide just doesn't allow us to show that, but really they just all have different roles. And this is really our support team. Let's look at a study back in 1995. Now, this included over 4,000 patients, right? The findings revealed that 47% of their doctors were unaware that their patients preferred a DNR order. They probably never even asked them. Almost a third of patients who wanted a DNR order, but again, their doctor wasn't aware, died before discharge. 46% of DNR orders were written 2 days before death. And 38% of patients spent 10 or more days in an ICU before dying. 50% endured pain, moderate or severe, at least half of the time during their last 3 days of life. This is not a pretty picture. So it requires having this conversation with your doctor about what it is you want. And if you want everything done, you can choose that too. But remember, what is everything, right? Everything might include repeated or prolonged CPR, being on a ventilator, multiple procedures and tests. It might include dialysis, implanted defibrillators, decreased pain medications and sedation. But what else is everything, right? What is everything? 92% of patients reported getting their medical information from TV. And on TV, 75% of people survive CPR. But in real life, it's quite different. It's more like 6 to 15% survive CPR to leave the hospital. So, it's a matter, we really need to look at the benefits versus the burdens, right? Benefits might include a longer life, comfort, relationships, community. And some of the burdens might include pain, suffering, technological dependence, isolation, immobility. Remember my friend with the brain tumor, she told me she didn't want surgery. She just wanted to go home and drink coffee with her husband. A peaceful death. Take time to ask, what is a peaceful death? I remember when I lost my mom, she had an advance directive. She also had a power of attorney, and all the other plans. It was as though she was orchestrating the whole production while she was in a coma. She had all of the kids lined up. She had us all with our specific tasks to focus on. And she ended up at home, really experiencing a peaceful death. When I define a peaceful death, that's my definition of it, because I got to be there with her, really holding her hand and, helping her through it. The idea is really to alleviate suffering. She got all of her goals met because she took the time to create all the documentation. we spent time reviewing her life and enhancing the quality of her life at the end. She also really experienced a great deal of dignity because that's how she wanted it. So again, it was a great honor to accompany her on the journey. But we have to maintain a realistic perspective too. I mean, there's no right way to die. Crisis and difficulties arrive. But when you hit a bump and you have an advance directive, you can be reminded and stay the course. Flexibility is essential. Remember, these are your goals. It's not about the doctor. It's not about the nurses, family, or even friends. It's about you. Now, here is a slide that has the links to some of the forms. These are from LifePath Hospice. Thank you again, Cindy Kramer. There's also another free form from Caring Info. And some other links. Every state is a little bit different as far as what they accept. I sent out some forms in the email when you guys registered that has some of the documents that are recognized in Florida, okay, and some information. Now in Florida, we don't need to have a notary. It just basically needs 2 witnesses. It just can't, when you have your witness, it just can't be the same person as your designated healthcare surrogate. Now, where do you want to keep your copy of advance directives? Well, make copies. And if you're updating your advance directive, make some new copies, right? As you make changes. You want to make sure a copy goes to your surrogate, family members, your physician, a spiritual leader. Some people recommend keeping a copy in the freezer. You can put one in the glove compartment of your car and your purse, but give copies to any facility that you go to for medical care. This will ensure that they have your wishes on file. Now, families get torn apart over disagreements, especially over end-of-life issues like this. I wonder if some of you remember Terry Schiavo, right? Terry was in her early 20s when she had an anoxic event. And you probably remember the video of Terry following the balloon, right? Now, the right picture there is a normal brain scan versus Terry's brain scan on autopsy. So as you can see, there was some major differences. The brain tissue was basically gone and her brain was full of fluid and she was blind. Now, this case was very sad. Originally, her parents and husband worked together doing extraordinary things to cure her. They traveled to California, they did experimental treatments, they did so much for years. And then her husband went to nursing school and decided they had done enough. He did remain married to her so that he could become her legal decision maker. He went to court and eventually won, but not until they ended up, really hating each other and going through years of legal battles. But her husband, Terry's husband, said that she once told him she would never want to live like that, referring to her state. It may or may not be true, but he had all the power because she did not have an advance directive. And this really is, very few people want to end their lives like this. This is a couple of photos of the technology assisted death. Some people feel like they should have done something different for their loved ones. this is how most of us want to spend our final moments, right? Surrounded by our loved ones, in the comfort of our own home, with support and love. So, is it time to complete or update your advance directive? Is it time to reassign or pick a surrogate? Again, where do you keep your forms? Yeah, I just updated some of our documents. We updated our wills, which are more of the financial, that manages sort of all the stuff. And we discussed in detail with our healthcare surrogates our wishes and made sure that they had copies of all of our documents. It took extra time, but I'll tell you what, I feel a great sense of peace now that it's been done and updated, and I hope that you will too. This is a quote by M.D. Unimund. Science says we must live and seeks the means of prolonging, increasing, facilitating, and amplifying life, of making it tolerable and acceptable. Wisdom says we must die and seek how to make us die well. Thank you. That's a great quote. But please, let's talk about it, right? If you don't, you or your loved one might end up left alone in a room with an elephant. Thank you. So we have time for questions and comments. If you'd like to unmute yourself, you could do that now. I also want to mention, if you want to receive a continuing education credit, I am going to email, or I may have already emailed you, an evaluation form. All you have to do is fill that out, email it back, include your license number, and I will email you a continuing education certificate. All right, so any questions or comments? You'll have to unmute yourself, but we have plenty of time to talk.
Gabrielle, this is Diane Gary. I just want to say thank you. This was, it was really well done, and your presentation was excellent. It was very moving. So thank you for the information.
I really appreciate that comment. Thank you so much for participating. And it seems like right now I have a lot of death and dying going on in my personal world too. I have friends that are coming and going, getting ready, and this has been so relevant to me too. So again, thank you for your energy and your feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? It's a lot of food for thought. I know. And again, I'm going to, for anyone that would like, I'm going to send out a PDF, which includes all the slides and all the links as well.
Gabrielle?
Really great.
Hello, this is Iris talking.
Hi, Iris.
Yes, I have a question. I have a 91-year-old mother that lives in New York, but she wants to be buried in Florida whenever this occurs. Is there anything against someone coming from another state to Florida to get buried? I mean, I don't really know anything about that.
Well, I would think that a funeral home, somewhere, because you'd have to purchase a plot unless they're part of the military, then that might be a different scenario. But if not, contacting a funeral home to
Okay.
discuss, and again, purchase a
Yeah.
plot. But I'm not
Right.
familiar with any restrictions against it, Iris.
Okay.
I know for many people, my mom chose to be cremated. So I have a portion of her ashes in my home, which really helps me feel connected when I feel like I need that.
Right.
But for many, they want a plot, a space.
Oh, yes, that's what she wants.
Right, which I love that she has made that wish known.
Yes. And she's been saving her money all for that too. She knows the prices have been going up. So, but I didn't know if there was maybe some state, state by state stuff that would interfere with that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any restriction against it,
Yeah.
but I think if you contact a funeral home, they would be able to direct you and, let you know the process of making
Right.
that happen, because it's probably a good idea to, how is your mom? How is her health?
She's pretty healthy. She just uses a cane, just security wise, safety. But she does quite a lot of things. Yeah.
That's great. Is she up in New York by herself, Iris, or is she with
Well,
other family?
actually, in New York, it's a lot easier, I should say, trying to get someone that comes over your house, you know? So she gets, I want to say it's 12 hours during the day of that. And then she likes watching her novels and stuff like that. And then she goes to sleep. Kind of concerns me because now she says she likes to sleep late. I'm talking about 12. One time she got up about 2, which is very unusual. But she goes to sleep around 11. But I just thought, you need to go outside, get some sun, get some vitamin D, this kind of stuff. So